everything you need to know about the 13 UDFAs that the Giants have offered contracts to. Welcome to the Empire State Sports Report. I'm your host, Adrianna, also known as New York Giants Fangirl on social. If you are not following me on Instagram or TikTok, do that right now because it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun on my page. And, we're just talking Giants and sometimes golf. But in the meantime, we're going to get to those UDFAs. But first, please subscribe to the podcast. The content never stops. There's more coming for you in the spring and summer. I'm going to have more guests on and things like that. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit the thumbs up on this video to tell YouTube that you like my videos and you want to see more. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it because like I said, there's 13 of them. One thing I want to say before I get into these players is some of them have already been signed. Some of them just have been offered contracts to. Some of them have paragraphs of information online. Some of them have about 3 bullet points. So it just all depends on the player. Some of them I have more information than others. So just want to warn you if you're like, why did you talk about this player for 2 seconds? I have nothing personal. I don't have beef with them. It's just that's all I could find. So let's start with Rushawn Baker, who is a running back, spent 3 years at Bucknell before transferring to Elon for 2024. He's originally from New York, so he has not signed a contract yet. He's been offered one from the Giants, but I'm getting the vibe that he's probably going to sign because he's from New York. So that wouldn't surprise me. 5'10", 218 pounds, his 2024 stats, 181 carries for 861 yards, 9 touchdowns, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. He was also used a little bit as a receiver, but based on his stats here, he obviously does not have the pass catching capabilities that guys like Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatteraboo do. So if you see him at camp, I do not expect him to be used as a pass catcher probably at all, because in 2024, he had 8 receptions for 48 yards. That's it. Averaging 6 yards per reception. Not bad, but not a lot. Couple things to know about him. He is a strong runner, great ball protector. He had 1 fumble in 3 years. That is impressive, sir. Well done. Lastly, he's pretty good at breaking tackles. The little bit of film and clips that I have seen on him so far, I have seen a couple guys coming at him and he just bulldozed through them. Impressive. Let's continue on offense as we talk about Beau Collins, a wide receiver from Notre Dame who spent the first couple of years of his college career at Clemson before transferring. He's 6'3", 198 pounds. In 2024, his stats include 41 receptions for 490 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 12 yards per catch. A couple things to know about him. He has good body control and good play strength to catch through contact. We've talked about this a lot, especially when it comes to Jalen Hyatt. That is a very good quality to have. Love this about him. Good back shoulder and can change route tempo to accommodate, to make catches like that. So curious to see. I think he's going to be paired up with Jackson Dart this summer. I think he's going to be in with the 3s. Same thing as Juice Wells. We'll talk about him shortly. But I expect to see him if he signs his contract. I think we'll see him this summer with the Giants. Has pretty decent quickness, and last thing, can beat the first tackle and create yards after the catch. Something else. We talk about how much we love that about Malik Neighbors. Love this about Beau Collins. So, the other thing is when we talk about some of these players is, like I said, they could always be the next Tommy DeVito. They could be the next Home on Fox, Elijah Chapman, or they could just be a practice squad guy. But ultimately, the thing that I love about these signings is that there's never enough competition. There's never enough players on the field, on the roster, on the practice squad, etc. You can never have too many. And I love that they are really focusing on competition and depth at every position. It's so, so important. By the way, the players that I'm going through are in no certain list. So in case you're wondering why I'm about to talk a defensive player now and then go back to Juice Wells, just flow with me, okay? Next up is my guy. Finally, guys, I've been waiting for another South Carolina player, okay? Last year, it was my guy Turbo Mills, the running back who I better see more of, Dante Miller, this year. This year, it is cornerback O'Donnell Fortune. He is 6 feet, 185 pounds, and he was the Shrine Bowl MVP. He has already signed a contract with the Giants, so I expect to see him at rookie mini camp, which is this weekend, May 9th and 10th. We don't have access to that, but I just expect to see him out there with his number on a jersey doing some shit. So hopefully I get to see some video footage of that. The number one thing I want to highlight about him is something that Joe Schoen, if you have paid attention to him, he's talked about this a lot, but in this offseason specifically, whether it's been free agency or the draft, there have been 2 things that he has talked about extensively that essentially every player that they have signed has: good instincts and good traits. And O'Donnell Fortune has damn good instincts. He also has good awareness and processing. He's a fluid and efficient mover on the field. In his 2 years at South Carolina, he had 9 passes defensed, 5 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. One thing I want to say about South Carolina too is they did a really nice job of rotating defensive players, but there are some players like Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard and TJ Sanders who just played like the bulk of the snaps. So I know his stats are not, impressive for someone who played 2 years, but he wasn't an every down player. So just so you know, he is quick to transition between cover corner and run defender. His size, processing, burst, and hair trigger playing downhill could make him an intriguing candidate for a move to free safety. Now, I thought that was interesting because something else that was highlighted in his draft profile is that his athleticism is a question mark. And, we talk about this for all the complaints that we have about Tay Banks. The guy is a freak athlete, and he does a really nice job of keeping up with wide receivers. He's stride for stride with a lot of them and a lot of top ones in the NFL. He just doesn't turn his head around, which is a separate problem. But the athleticism that you have to have as starting quarter in the NFL, especially playing on the outside, is you obviously have to be able to keep up with these wide receivers. And for a guy like Fortune, who that's not really his strong point, I could see them moving him to safety. So I'm curious if they're going to do that this summer. I don't know what they're going to do. They also really preach about versatility with all these different players. So maybe they'll kind of just see how he does at corner and then think about moving him around. I really don't know. I have a lot of question marks about Shane Bowen. We know this, but you never know. I think that it could be an opportunity for him to move over. Last thing here, Fortune doesn't have the athletic ability to really stick with players in man coverage, run with them down the field, or recover if initially beaten. So, there's a reason why these guys are undrafted free agents and they don't end up getting picked in the draft, regardless of what round it is. So anyway, they all have things to work on. So we'll see. The Giants signed him already, and we'll see what he does for them this spring and summer. If he makes it through camp, makes it through preseason, maybe he will be a practice squad guy. Next up, let's talk about Antoine Juice Wells, because I think that out of all of these players, he is one of the top guys who has the best opportunity to either make the practice squad or this roster. And it's not just because he's from Ole Miss and he played with Jackson Dart. There's a lot of reasons why. Let's talk about them. He's 6'1", 201 pounds. So he's a bigger wide receiver, especially for some of the other ones that we have on the roster. I think the Giants are going to like that. Size is important for wide receivers. Jackson Dart, for those of you who watched the John Gruden interview, if you didn't, I suggest you do. It's an hour long. Just sit down, change the speed to 1.5. That's what I did. You'll get through it a little bit quicker. But Dart is asked about his wide receivers, especially in certain different play calls and different games that they had. And he talks about Juice and says that was the savviest of all the Ole Miss wide receivers. So we love that. He also, the acrobatic catch that he made on this throw from Dart in the end zone during the UGA game was unbelievable. It's in the John Gruden video, and I'm sure that you can Google it. I also am sure that someone has probably posted it on Twitter by now, but great catch. He was 6th in college football last year in average depth of target at 17.8 yards downfield. He was also ranked 16 in yards after the catch at 8.3 yak yards. I like that. Would take that. Couple other good things and some stats about him. He had almost 1,000 receiving yards in his first year at South Carolina. Go Cox. He was there in 2022. And then before that in 2021, he was at James Madison. So we got another player who was just all over the place. James Madison had over 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. And then in 2023, he transferred to Ole Miss, and his season was cut short with a foot injury. He was primarily used as a deep threat or a screen receiver at Ole Miss. So I'd like that for his size, they can use him as a screen. Sounds like he's got some versatility there and a deep threat. Him and Jalen Hyatt, battle it out. Let's see what we got. You never know. But obviously an effective wide receiver having over 1,000 yards for back-to-back years. And, it's curious. We will never know, obviously, but if he didn't have that injury in 2023, would he end up having another 1,000-yard receiver? Would he have been a top receiver for Dart throughout the last 2 years at Ole Miss? We never know. But he's got good vision as a ball carrier, good use of misdirection to create separation opportunities. And the last thing I have here is that he's just not the best athlete. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. But overall, he has decent size for a wide receiver. And like I said, I do think he's going to have the opportunity to make the roster because I do think there's still some question marks at wide receiver. Let's move over to another Ole Miss player, which I think we're going to have to transition calling the Giants the Southern New York Bills to now the Northern Ole Miss Giants, because now they signed another Ole Miss player. And this guy is actually signed. Juice Wells has not been signed yet, but was offered a contract. I expect him to sign it. Like I said, they have till this weekend to do it. So Reese McIntyre was the starting center at Ole Miss last year. He is 6'5", 320 pounds. He started all 13 games last year, obviously snapped to Jackson Dart. So those guys have good rapport, great experience. They don't know how to call plays. So that's interesting. Something else we learned from the John Gruden thing is that, you know, instead of the call or whatever, I cannot for the life of me think of what I'm trying to say right now. He just clapped and then he snapped the ball. So gonna learn how to do that. You can't just be clapping in the NFL, but you know, entertaining. Anyway, he also has left guard experience and he has special teams experience. So I think that there were a couple of reasons why the Giants liked him, right? Obviously, he's got the connection to Dart. He's got that good rapport, everything like that we love. He also has experience on the line, most experience at center, but has experience playing left guard. And on top of that, he's got special teams experience. So he blocked on the line for field goals and extra points. So obviously good experience. Love that. We don't really have a backup for JMS either. Like if he goes down, GVR is probably going to be the starting right guard. So if you move him to center, like we're putting Evan Neal in, I mean, I don't know. And, you know, they also have Austin Schlottman, who is like not that great. So, you know, having someone who has a lot of center experience, I think is great. Would take him over Jim Morrissey, I think. So he was at Ole Miss since 2019, and he ended up redshirting a couple years. So like I said, versatile player, a lot of experience. The Giants did sign him, so expect to see him at camp this summer. Next up, RJ Delansancy, cornerback from Wisconsin. He's 5'10", 196 pounds, fast as hell. The guy ran a 4.440. Now, this guy has also played at 3 different colleges along with some of these other players. So went to Nebraska first, then spent the next 3 years at Toledo. So when we talk about also, I want to highlight here is some of these guys all have a lot of connections to each other, right? So we talked about Marcus Bowe and Tyrone Tracy, both played at Purdue together. We have all of these Ole Miss players. And now we have a guy, RJ Delansancy, who was at Toledo for 3 years, 3 out of the 6 years that Darius Alexander, the 3rd round, 65th overall pick for the Giants in this year's draft, defensive lineman, was picked. So those two played defense together. So I'm curious if we get any information on that out of either one of them. A question to ask if I had a media pass. But anyway, and then his last year was at Wisconsin. He played in 11 games, made 7 tackles while playing defense and special teams. Next up is Makari Page, which I found a literal dissertation on this guy. So I'm going to narrow it down here. I narrowed it down to a couple bullet points, strengths and weaknesses, but this is a bit of a long one. So safety from Michigan, 6'4", 208 pounds. All 4 years he spent at Michigan. What you need to know during those 4 years is that I know for a fact he had multiple defensive coordinators, and I believe that he had 3 different ones because when I talked to another Michigan defensive player whose name is escaping me right now, he said that in his 4 years at Michigan, he had multiple defensive coordinators, one of them, of course, being Wink. So obviously he's played in Wink system in the last year, and he obviously is smart to have to learn that many defensive schemes in that many years and do pretty well at it. So his 2024 stats, he had 45 tackles, 23 solo, 4 pass deflections, 2 interceptions. He also has a ton of variety and experience playing all over the field on defense. He's played nickel, deep safety, and of course, stacked in the box. So a lot of experience there. He played in 48 games with 27 starts, earning all Big Ten honorable mentions in 2022 and 2023. And he's a reliable tackler, which I know music to all of our ears. plus length for the position with impressive wingspan and natural pad level that helps maintain leverage against tight ends. Something else that he is good at too, which I wanted to talk about, is this. He exhibits advanced pattern recognition skills when operating in zone coverage, particularly from two high safety alignments, and clean footwork transitioning from back pedal to break, showing corner-like fluidity despite safety frame. Now, this is important because have you guys seen the wide receivers and the tight ends that we have to go up against in the NFC East? I know you have. And I also know that he is an undrafted free agent and a safety who hasn't been signed yet. But I like to highlight those things because if these guys do end up playing well this summer, if they end up being a practice squad or a depth piece on the roster, those are good things to know. A couple things he needs to work on because he's not perfect. None of these guys are. None of us are. We all know this. Hip tightness shows up in sudden direction changes, particularly when matched against shifty slot receivers. Something to improve upon. Needs to develop more urgency, triggering downhill against outside run plays from deep alignment. So curious to see if any of this stuff gets improved upon, but I do think that he's going to have the option. He's another guy who I think has a good option or opportunity to make this roster because there's not really a lot of safety depth. And Dane Belton is in his last year of his contract, so I don't know if the Giants are going to re-sign him. And if you can get an UDFA who's cheap and decent enough to be a good replacement for him when he goes, then you never know. Could be an option. Next up is Trace Ford, an edge from Oklahoma, 6'2", 252 pounds. Freshman year, he played in 13 games. He started 6 of them, played steadily, even received votes for the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. He had 29 tackles, 4 for a loss, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. Then that was in 2019. In 2020, he played in all 10 games, starting in 9, 22 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He missed the bowl game with a pair of torn knee ligaments, and then he missed the entire 2021 season due to gruesome injuries and took a red shirt. So that's also a reason why some of these guys end up as UDFAs or end up sliding in the draft, like the tight end Fidoni that the Giants drafted. Injuries definitely play a big part here. So in 2023, he played in 9 games, and then he missed the final 4 with another injury. He had a broken kneecap. In the 9 games, he had 8 tackles, 1 sack, entered the transfer portal, and then went to play for the Sooners, Oklahoma, his final year. So in 2024, he played in 13 games, 18 tackles, 3.5 for a loss, and 1 interception. So bounced back pretty well from injury, but obviously this guy has an injury history. So, we'll see whether or not that affects him in the long run for the Giants. Next up, Tommy McCormack, safety from Idaho, 6'1", 210, all Big Sky honors on 3 occasions, finished his career 273 total tackles, 9 for a loss, 7 interceptions, and 24 passes defended. In 2024, he was second on the team with 39 solo tackles, 42 assisted tackles, and led the team with 3 interceptions and 1 pick six. I want to talk about this quote because it reiterates everything that I have said about Joe Schoen and his good instinct talk and all of the things that he talks about when it comes to these players. This is a direct quote from his head coach, Thomas Ford, and I loved it, so I wanted to share. Also, ball hawk. What you need to know. He is one of the most instinctual players I've ever been around and was always around the football, both in the run game and against the pass. He'll always be turnover Tommy to me because if there's one play to be made, he's the one coming down with the football. Tommy is someone who is always ready to make a play in the biggest moments, which should give him a great shot to be a good pro. How many times have you heard Joe Schoen say ball hawk? Spoiler alert, a shitload. The limit does not exist. So we can see why they liked a guy like Tommy McCormack. So keep your eyes peeled on him this summer. Next up, RJ Perry, offensive lineman from University of South Florida, 6'6", 330 pounds. He started at Tennessee, was there from 2020 to 2023. And then in the spring of 2023, he transferred over to USF. He started in 2024 for 12 games and played them all at left tackle. Could he be a backup option? Maybe. Next up, Nate McCollum, wide receiver from UNC, 5'8.5", 185 pounds. Another guy who transferred, started at Georgia Tech, and then moved over to UNC. He joined 2 players in the ACC to have multiple games with at least 8 receptions and 100 receiving yards and a touchdown. His 60 receptions mark the most by a Georgia Tech receiver in a season since Calvin Johnson. I think we all remember that guy and how well he did. So good experience at Georgia Tech before going over to UNC, 5'8.5" wide receiver. Next up, Dalen Cambray, also a wide receiver, mostly a special teamer, 6 foot, 192 pounds, second in special teams in 2024, was also in the quarterback room as an emergency quarterback. Very interesting. Said that he wants to be a coach someday. He has over 1,000 special team snaps since 2020 and 195 offensive snaps. So likely to just be a special team player. Last one, I'm just past 20 minutes. I was so close to having the cutoff at 20 minutes, but that's it. This is the last one here. Is Germaine Terry, a tight end from Oregon State. 6'4", 225 pounds, 23 receptions, 375 yards, averaging an impressive 16.3 yards per reception. Finally showcased in his final year his playmaking abilities. Great technique, and he's a good blocker on the move or when in space, but needs to improve blocking as an inline tight end. Needs time in the weight room. Some college defensive linemen have manhandled him at 225 pounds. So some recommendations have been for him to put on some weight this offseason, because if that happened in college, imagine what Dexter Lawrence or someone like Dexter Lawrence's size would do to him. Not great. But what is great is that he has quick hands and feet. So that is everything on all the Giants UDFAs. I'm going to keep you guys posted on which players sign and what happens in the mini camp this weekend. It's rookie mini camp, May 9th and 10th. The media does not have access to that, but what we will likely get is some interviews before and after. We will get updates from Brian Dable and some of the coaches, and then we will probably find out which of the players have signed out of those 13 UDFAs that were brought in to meet with the Giants. And then, of course, the 2 signings that already happened, which was O'Donnell Fortune and Reese McIntyre. So that's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening, and make sure you subscribe for everything New York Giants.